Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. My name is Allie and welcome to the top comment where I read and react to insane internet chaos in the form of Reddit stories. So if you like this type of content, please don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and it means a lot to me. Happy 420 everybody. I love this day. This day is so much fun. When I first moved to Colorado, I got here right before 420, so you guys already know I had a blast. It was amazing. I went to a pot shop on the day and I actually met one of my best friends there who I'm still like best friends with today. So it's just a really special holiday all in all. But I am going to be sharing two of my all-time favorite Reddit stories with you guys. They do definitely fit the vibe of 420. So let's get into it. All right, story number one comes from r-TIFU, and that stands for Today I F***ed Up. Today I f***ed up by stuffing my face with edibles before dinner with my wife's parents. Recently, I traveled to Denver, Colorado with my wife and my wife's parents. As a resident of a non-legalized state and as someone who is too much of a p*** to regularly buy illegal the thing I was looking forward to most was the chance to buy fancy legal What could possibly go wrong? So the first thing I do upon arriving and after successfully ditching the in-laws is drag my wife to a nearby dispensary for a shopping spree. And oh my God, it was just like in my dreams. Tons of different options and neat little sample jars and a team of helpful stoners walking me through the various strains. Are you looking for a mellow body high, or do you want something that gives you a little bit more pep and energy? Or are you just hoping for something light to take the stress off? Yes, yes, and yes, I replied eagerly like a fat kid in a candy store, and I requested an 8 of about 7 different options. In hindsight, if I had learned anything from this experience, it's that my math and science teachers never taught me basic information like what is an ounce or how much can a person consume in a single weekend. Sure, I might be able to tell you when 2 speeding trains leaving separate stations will collide or recite the first 14 digits of pi, but as it turns out, none of that information is particularly relevant to getting high in a responsible and efficient manner. And it was at this dispensary that I also learned that you actually can't smoke in public places, including the hotel me and my wife were staying at. As a result, before leaving, I begged my wife to buy some edibles that I could munch on until we found a place to properly get lit. After expressing shock as to the absurd volume of that we were buying, unlike me, she is the product of private school and understands the imperial measurement system. She relents and we walk out of the store with what felt like a dump truck of weed, plus a small package of seemingly inconspicuous ginger snap cookies. When we finally get to the hotel room, I tear those bad boys open, only to find about a dozen tiny little cookies roughly the size of a quarter. What the f***, Denver? Seeing the skepticism and hunger in my eyes, my wife warns me that I should go easy and look at the back of the package first before trying one. Dose size is half a cookie. I read silently as I start taking micro bites from the edges like a giant chinchilla gnawing on a sunflower seed. But what kind of savage only eats half a cookie? So a second later, I covertly pop the remainder into my mouth. I then quickly stuff another 2 cookies in my mouth for good measure the moment my wife turns her back. We may not have legal weed back home, but I routinely devour an entire package of Milanos in one sitting without breaking a sweat. Your move, tiny ginger snaps. About 30 minutes later, we are in the backseat of her parents' rental car on the way to dinner. And that's when things start to go tits up. My stomach growls loudly and angrily. My wife looks at me with inquisitive eyes that seem to say diarrhea, but I merely clutch my tummy and mumble something about altitude sickness. You didn't eat a whole cookie, did you? She asks, 10% in genuine concern and 90% in seething irritation. Of course not, I respond, avoiding eye contact for the remainder of the car ride. A few minutes later, we are climbing out of her parents' rental car and heading into some trendy farm-to-table restaurant. I don't remember how I made it to my seat, and I don't even remember looking at the menu, but I do remember the concerned look on the waiter's face as he asked me if I was doing all right. Keep it together, man, I say to myself, but my wife's sudden groan suggests that I may have also said that to the waiter. Things are going downhill fast from here. The waiter nods sympathetically, takes our orders, and then heads to the next table. The moment he walks away, my wife is staring daggers at me. I start to worry that the jig is up. You are sweating from your entire face, she says with both pity and disgust. Not quite knowing what to do now, I reach for my napkin and proceed to blot my cheeks, nose, chin, neck, and forehead. At this point, my wife's mom looks over at me with some concern. "Are you all right?" she asks kindly. "Yeah, the food's just a bit spicy," I reply, far too quick to realize that we had literally just ordered and there was nothing on the table except for a basket of dinner rolls. My wife kicks me under the table to grab my attention. "Bathroom, now," she hisses. "Get it together." I reluctantly get up from the table and head for the toilet. After splashing several handfuls of water on my face, I approach a urinal and start to pee. Now, one of the more disconcerting events of those tiny ginger snap monsters is the feeling that time has become untethered from reality. As I'm peeing, I start to get the very unsettling feeling that I have been taking a piss for the better part of an hour and that my wife must be pacing around the restaurant worried sick about me. But deep down, I know this is absurd. I've been peeing all my life, sometimes multiple times a day. Sometimes I've probably taken more than 50,000 leaks, and it usually only takes about a minute at most. So given that my typical pee is no more than 60 seconds, and given that it feels like I'm about halfway done, that means I've probably only been standing in here for about 30 seconds, right? But the guy at the urinal next to me doesn't respond and instead starts shuffling away from me midstream like a startled penguin. I try, albeit unsuccessfully, to break eye contact. Oh no! After finally finishing, I again splash some water on my face and return to my seat, and I make sure to apologize to the table for being gone such a long time just in case my math was off. Next, I try to briefly engage in small talk with my wife's father, far too high to understand what either of us are saying, not wanting to start laughing uncontrollably at the wrong moment, or really at any moment. I figure the safest idea is to nod my head periodically and drink a ton of water. Nothing cures mental fatigue like water, right? To my wife's horror, I stand up, grab my water glass, and thrust it onto the waiter, who unfortunately is on the opposite side of the restaurant. But he turns out to be really cool, and after making his way over to my table, tells me that he'll do his best to keep me stocked with ice water for the rest of the meal. He also helpfully suggests that if the dinner rolls aren't too spicy for me, I should probably eat one or two so that I'm not sitting there on an empty stomach. Smart man. However, after going through all of the bread on the table and 3 glasses of water, I started to get worried that I needed actual food to offset the growling and paranoia from those tiny ginger snap devils. "Do you think I should flag down the waiter again and ask what's taking so long?" I suggest helpfully to my wife. "What? We literally just ordered 3 minutes ago." And in that exchange, my wife loses her cool. "How many cookies did you eat?" she demands. "Whoa, easy there, Torquemada," I respond, somewhat horrified at her outburst. "I had a few cookies, but I kept it down. I don't want your parents to know how f***ed up I am right now." "Really? They are sitting 2 feet away from you. They know." I look up and for the first time notice that both of my in-laws are just staring at me for what literally felt like an eternity. Oh, there's actually an edit on here from OP, and it says, "Wow, thanks everyone for all the love and even for some of the hate. I have officially peaked in life." As for part 2 of the story, there's a reason, or technically 3 delicious reasons, why it was cut short. At that point, my wife's singular focus was on getting me out of the restaurant before I either puked all over the table, pissed myself, or an unsightly combination of both. So after a few spastic 2-handed waves goodbye to my in-laws, she rushed me to the door like a Secret Service agent evacuating the president. My night after was a whirlwind of barfing and groveling, mixed with a few vain attempts at getting handsy back in the hotel room. But being the absolute awesome sweetie that she is, my wife stuck with me through the whole nightmare, whispering over and over again in my ear, "Please don't die, we have a mortgage." I have done a lot of side quests in my life, and one of them was working at dispensaries and managing them too. And where I lived out in the San Luis Valley, I worked at one of the little shops that's like right on the side of 17 as you're coming through Moffett. I used to manage that store. Okay, and in Moffett too, you're at like 8,000 elevation. So it's 3,000 feet higher than Denver. And so we would get tourists that were coming in that were planning on hiking the 14ers out there, right? I would always tell them stories like this of, you need to be careful. Less is more, especially at this altitude. And if you get too high, eat bread, eat carbs, go take a nap, go take a shower, like anything to get yourself from not feeling like that. This story absolutely cracks me up because 1, I live in Colorado. 2, I like, and 3, I've worked in shops like this. I have been the one to sell you the tiny itty bitty ginger snap devils. They're not, I mean, he's not kidding. The treats out here that you get, they're not a full size. Most of them aren't even the size of like an Oreo. Like think of like half of like an Oreo or like a Chips Ahoy even. That's literally the size that you're getting. So I completely understand the impulse. Start very, very slow. Do not take more than you need. Wait 2 hours, okay? And if it's not happening by the 2 hour mark, then yeah, go ahead and take more. Whatever. Do you. But only take a little bit more. Don't jump into, okay, this one didn't work, so I'm gonna take the whole package. Because if you're gonna do that, you're just asking for it at this point. Let's get into the comments. The top comment says, reading stories of people f***ed up more than they can handle is my all-time favorite. The next comment says, I got pretty f***ed up the other night when my brother gave me some brownies for New Year's Eve. I've smoked the greens many times and taken edibles, so I figured 2 would be sufficient. What I failed to remember was the fact that I hadn't done either of those 2 things in about 2 years and no longer had a tolerance built up like I had in the past. Needless to say, at about 4 a.m, my wife asked me why I was naked watching the credits of Super High Me, and my reply was, I think this is my life now. And she left me there until 2 p.m. the next day. I called my brother and I told him what happened, and all he had to say was, did I forget to mention you should probably only eat half of one at a time? Yes, you did. Oh, that's so brutal. The next comment says, guilty. Only done edibles once. Friend made brownies for a group of us that were going camping. We went to the campsite, set everything up. I proceeded to take the biggest brownie. My friend tried to stop me and tells me that even a quarter of that piece will be enough. I ignore him, scarf down the entire thing. An hour passes and I'm not feeling I call everyone a for thinking a quarter is enough to fuck anyone up. Proceed to eat the second biggest brownie. Fast forward another hour. We had set up a campfire. Everyone had their chairs and their coolers out, and we were having a great conversation about what movies would be good for a bad movie night. Suddenly, I feel my face begin to melt. I start to freak out, and I realize I can't speak. I try, but all that comes out is groans. Everyone's looking at me puzzled. I took out my earbuds and decided that listening to the Doom soundtrack would be a great idea. All I know is that I left this plane of existence. I stared at the fire for the following 9 hours, and I proceeded to see the battle of hell in the fire. No one else existed. I didn't move. I didn't take my eyes off the fire. Then suddenly I decided to get up. I go behind one of the cars and puke. I stood there for what I assumed was 30 to 40 minutes. Nope. I stood there dozing in and out of sleep for 3 hours. Went to bed, died, woke up Lord knows what time the following day with no recollection of how I got to bed. But I cried because I was alive. Edibles. Never again. That's intense. I'm sorry you had that experience, but also that's pretty funny. You definitely f***ed around and found out, my friend. You should never take that much. You are not stronger than the edible, babe. The last comment says, oh man, all good edible stories begin with, so I wasn't feeling anything and ate some more. That they do. That they do. You guys are funny. Do you have a bad story? Have you ever had a bad trip before? I really want to know in the comments below. Let's chat. I could tell you some stories that you would absolutely laugh at. Drop a comment if you want me to do a whole episode on just my own crazy dispensary experience, because I worked in the pot shops for 6 years. So let me know and I will give you guys all the tea. All right, we're gonna get into our final story of today. Yes, we only have 2 because this is a bonus episode. This one went crazy viral. This might actually be my all-time favorite Reddit story, and if you've heard it before, stick with me till the end, because we actually get a picture of what this situation was like, which I have never seen before. I found it scrolling through the comments and I knew I had to share it with you guys. So this next one also comes from r-TIFU, and it says, today I f***ed up secretly eating mushrooms while my wife was asleep in a house full of cats. This post is 10 years old, and every single time I either read it or hear it, I laugh so hard. So bear with me. This happened a good long while ago, so not really today. It was April when I started this journey. During the winter, I became a member of a magic mushroom forum and was learning all I could about growing magic mushrooms. I tried it once before and it grew only a yellowish green mush that smelled of sweaty socks, but this time would be different. I had a spore print sent to me and was off to the races. I had tried mushrooms once about 10 years prior and the experience was rather enjoyable. I have had way too many bad experiences with to even think about trying it, and from what I remembered, the mushroom experience was much less chaotic and harsh for me than the majority of my have been. After following every grow tip I could gather and about a month and a half of waiting, I have viable mushrooms drying in the food dehydrator. The whole journey from spore print to fruit was done for reasons I don't yet have a great grasp on. I was thinking at that time that growing them would impart some spiritual meaning into my existence. It had been a long time since I had taken any illegal substances, and I wanted it to be special in some way. Growing them myself was an attempt at providing that, I guess. The night I took them, I really wasn't planning on doing it. I was bored out of my wits and chatting with online friends. I told them I was going to eat my mushrooms, but I didn't know how much to eat without a scale. I took a few pictures of my intended dose and posted them and immediately got advice to cut that dose in half. So with my wife asleep, I went down to the kitchen and I made a concoction of purple slurry and powdered mushrooms and gulped it down. I came back up and told the chatters that the deal was done and I was taking a shower and would be back once the fun started. I was only in the shower for about 5 minutes when I felt a rush like my consciousness was being pulled away from my body. I was fighting to keep it with me. It felt as though I had let it fly away. I would have had a full out of body experience, but for some reason I felt compelled to hold on to it. I quickly turned off the water and looked down at my feet. They seemed miles away. That's when it hit me that the shits were already kicking in. Out of the shower, I put on the same clothes I came in with and headed upstairs. The shower is in the basement of the house and there is a door at the top of the stairs. Opening the door, the light from the kitchen blasted my eyes and I got a good gauge of how far along in the experience I was. I would see that the kitchen floor looked smooth and had a liquid-like texture. But before I could survey anymore, my black cat ran down into the basement. I didn't want to forget about him down there, and I never really thought of the fact that I could just leave the door open and shoo any members of our herd that wandered down there after my trip. I tugged down the stairs after him and scooped him up and started back up the stairs. Halfway up, a brown blur flew down the stairs as another cat dove to the basement. I tossed the black one in the kitchen and went after the brown one. While picking up the brown one, the black cat came back down the steps again and I scooped him up too. Now I am carrying 2 cats up the stairs. At the top of the stairs, the door is wide open and I see our other 3 cats had come to investigate the commotion. As I made the final push to the top, they all jumped into action like they planned it in advance. I started laughing hysterically, let go of the cats in my arms, and sat on top of the steps as I watched all the cats bounce down the stairs one by one. I found the whole situation so funny. Here I am coming up hard on I can feel the confusion building every second, and I now have to figure out a way of getting all 5 cats out of the basement. By the time I had collected myself, I devised a plan, and my face was hot, and the objects were starting to move. The time dilation had manifested, and minutes were seeming to take longer and longer. My plan was to go down and capture 1 cat at a time and usher them up the stairs. Once I got to 5, the task would be complete. I raced down and grabbed the first cat I came across and ran up to the landing and tossed it pretty forcefully up the last 3 steps into the kitchen so it would get the point that I didn't want them down there. Back down I went and did the same thing. That's 2 down and 3 to go. I was getting more confused by the minute, and on the 4th cat I had already forgotten how many cats I previously ushered up the stairs. Face palm. On my way back down, I decided to count the cats downstairs and that would let me know how many there were upstairs. Unfortunately, the whole time I had neglected one key detail in my foolproof plan. The door was still open. Just as I had reached the basement floor, the whole herd came stampeding down again. Plan A was an utter failure. Formulated just as quickly as Plan A was Plan B. Cats have names, right? I will count the cats as I bring them up and remember the name of each cat so I don't lose track of them like last time. Brilliant. I thump back down the stairs and grab Funchy, the black one, and take him up the stairs. He quickly tries to run back down and I push him back and shut the door. Back downstairs, I grab another cat, Sammy, number 2, I think, as they put her upstairs and close the door behind me. At this point, my mind is worn out. Things are moving very well and walls have waves in them and on them and everything. It is all but impossible to keep my mind on the task at hand. Those 2 things, coupled with the fact that the time dilation is making the last 5 minutes chasing these beasts feel like I have been at it for hours, is making this fool's errand about as much as my brain could handle at its current state. I trudge on trying to complete this task and grab another cat, but at the top of the stairs, I forgot where I was in the order. I put that cat upstairs and tried to count the cats up there to give me an idea of how many were left, but of course, they are not in the kitchen anymore, and again, it escapes me that if I just keep bringing up the cats until I run out of cats to retrieve, I will be through with this cluster. Unable to think past my current predicament, I race around upstairs looking for the cats that had been brought up, and they are nowhere to be found. My state had grown worse, and I started thinking that maybe they got outside, but there was no way they could get outside because no one opened the door. The door! I forgot to close the basement door. I ran back into the kitchen and down the stairs for the 50 quadrillionth time, and bam, there they were, all 5 of them, safe and sound. I had found the missing cats. Hallelujah. They weren't outside. My wife would have killed me if they were gone. Me, all high and shit, and all the cats go missing? I might as well pack my shit and go. What a relief. I love my kitties. Wait, are we still in the basement? I am done. My mental ability is gone. Each trip up and down felt like eternity. I had only just enough energy left to get up the stairs to the couch. I kneel by the couch and think about what I am going to do. I am mentally exhausted because apparently counting to 5 is simply impossible while on mushrooms. My mind racing to come up with a solution to this impossible problem, and never once did I think of just leaving them down there until they found something more entertaining to do than drive me out of my mind. The white flag was up. It was over. I needed the big gun. It was 2 or 3 a.m. and she had to get up and go to work in the morning, but I had no choice. I needed an adult. I have to wake my wife. She would make it all better. She would tame those damn hellions and everything would be fine, but it wasn't fine. I went upstairs to our room and woke her up in the gentlest way possible by jumping on the bed and yelling, "Help! I took mushrooms! 5 cats in the basement and I can only count to 4. Not the way I had envisioned it going in my head downstairs, but I was happy to get that much out without forgetting the reason why I woke her up in the first place. Sleepily, she marched down the stairs and I led her to the kitchen where the basement door was still wide open. All I could do was stand at the door and point down the stairs. I think I may have whimpered a little too with my gesture. She was not amused. I thought I was finally going to get closure. She would get the cats from the basement and I would be saved, but no. My savior turned into my tormentor as she said the only words in the world that could crush me into an even more pitiful state. "Well, go get him," she said. She didn't understand that I was fighting this fight for what seemed like days now and wanted nothing more than to curl up in the corner and cry until I fell asleep. She had no clue how close I was to a full-on mental breakdown. Tears welled up as I crossed the threshold of the basement door and descended again into my personal hell. I scooped up a kitty and carried it slowly up the stairs, setting it on the kitchen floor. "One," my wife said in a long, drawn-out voice like she was talking to a 2-year-old. Back down I went and grabbed another bundle of joy and slinked up the stairs only to be shamed by a long, drawn-out 2. By the 3rd cat, short audible poo-poo sounds were coming from me as I was almost to my breaking point. My wife had begun to laugh at me and seemed to laugh harder each time I came up, more beaten than before. When the last cat came up and I was greeted by a sighing 5 and a "Now was that so hard?" from my wife, I tried to apologize, but she waved me off with a stern "We'll talk about this in the morning," and walked up the stairs to bed. The cat ordeal was over, but the trip was far from it. I was immensely grateful to my online buddies who talked me into cutting the dose in half because the rest of the night was filled with confusion and mind and intense time dilation. Not really a bad trip necessarily as bad trips go, but not all enjoyable. I think I can cross mushies off the list of viable boredom relievers. I won't be doing them anytime in the future. That is for sure. Oh my gosh. I love this story. I get such a good visual from this of this guy just completely out of his mind on mushrooms. I just picture this guy bouncing up and down the stairs with the cats. Let's read what some of the comments say. Oh, actually, it looks like there are 2 updates from OP first. The first one says, "Wow, made the front page, got gold. Today was a good day. Thank you for the gold, whoever you are. I'm still at work and will answer a few questions when I get home. The best part is seeing all the comments of people who can relate." The second update says, "Okay, first things first. I have 6 cats now and 2 large dogs. My wife is a vet tech and comes home with a new animal every 6 months to a year. Every time a kitten's mother got hit by a car, I get a sob story about a new cat. Now, I think she hit her limit seeing that we have 2 litter boxes that hold 40 pounds of litter each and that she is cleaning them out twice a day. I told her that she was heading to crazy cat lady status and to stop collecting them. But I really think if I didn't say something, I would be swimming in cats right now. She has a problem. She's only heading to crazy cat lady territory? I think she's fully in it, but whatever. As long as they have a nice home to go to, I guess it doesn't matter. Next, as to why I didn't leave the cats down there, I was incapable of looking past the task at hand and hyper-focused on getting the cats out of the basement because of the effects of the mushrooms. Under normal circumstances, I would have been able to get them up there by just shaking their treats or chasing them with a spray bottle or just leaving them down there with the door open so they could come up on their own. Unfortunately, I couldn't even consider any other option. That was my job and it had to be done. The mushroom gods had spoken. Oh my gosh. Hilarious. So funny. I love this story. This is honestly in my top 10 favorite Reddit stories of all time. I remember I read this before I even got into like watching Reddit content and long before I ever got into making it. So this is kind of a full circle moment. This is hilarious. The top comment on this one says, "Wow, you were quite literally herding cats." The next comment says, "This is hilarious. What did your wife say in the morning?" And OP replies to that saying, "Not much, just to not eat mushrooms while she was out of the house or until I was out of the house. She tried to get me to go to bed after the cat chase and I laid down for a bit. She kicked me out of bed because I was waving my arms in the air. I don't know. It just felt right." The next comment says, "Cats know. They take advantage on purpose. Never do or get really around a group of cats. They will with you harder than a fraternity initiation. Unless you give them a big fat happy sack of catnip, then you're all on the same trip." Alrighty, the last comment on this says, "Sounds like a catastrophe." That it was, my friend. I am so glad you made it out of that trip alive. I don't blame you for never wanting to do this stuff again. You also have to plan it too. The fact that you say you've done this stuff so many times and yet you did it completely unplanned. I mean, you were kind of asking for it at that point, in my opinion. You always have to plan this stuff out. You got to have a trip sitter. You have to have a game plan. Otherwise, if your mind just runs wild and you just let the universe do its thing, I don't know. Comment below. Have you ever had an experience like this? Oh, before we go, there is a picture from this experience with this guy. I'm assuming his wife took it, but I'm going to put it up on the screen here so that you guys can see it. This is the dude with his cats. That's a lot of cats, and I'm saying that as somebody who has 3 dogs and a fish. So, alrighty, y'all. Happy 420. I love you guys. Thank you for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Comment below. Tell me your plans for today. Tell me if you've ever had a bad trip. Give me all of your tea. I'm so here for it. But I'm gonna go and celebrate the rest of the day and enjoy my little gardening session I'm gonna have. So I love you guys, and I'll see you on Tuesday for the next one. Bye.